It's election season 2021 here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the campaign trail is starting to heat up. Here in the month of April, we'll talk with Norfolk State University alums that are currently serving in the General Assembly here in the Commonwealth. This is Say the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Say the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. For the month of April, we're having a conversation with Norfolk State University alums that are currently serving in the General Assembly. So for the entire month, we'll have an opportunity to engage those alums who are in our legislature making important decisions for our community here in Hampton Roads and all around the Commonwealth. But before we go there, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful and a happy Resurrection Sunday here in this Easter holiday. I know that we're all anxious to get back to church and back to worship, so I hope you're still being safe, you're still adhering to guidelines, and very soon we'll all get back together because here on Blazing Hot 91, we will get through this together. Our first guest here in the first half hour is definitely no stranger to our show and to the Norfolk State University community. Our first conversation is with Delegate Cliff Hayes, representing the Virginia House of Delegates, District 77, and my dear friend. Delegate Hayes, how are you doing this Resurrection Sunday?
We're doing just wonderful, Dr. Claville, and certainly happy to be with you once again with the Center for African American Public Policy at the Norfolk State University. Behold
the green and gold. Absolutely, absolutely. And listen, like I told the audience, you're definitely no stranger to the Norfolk State University community. Definitely you had a storied career here, not just you, but also before your father and your family. And again, if there's no great example of a supporter in our General Assembly than Delegate Cliff Hayes representing District 77. So we're truly thankful for you giving back and always representing the green and gold.
Absolutely, and we're certainly happy to be here with you on today and giving deference and respect to the dynamic leadership of the president of the Norfolk State University, Dr. Adam Gaston. We certainly appreciate her leadership. Appreciate your leadership there with the Center for African American Public Policy, and we're just happy to be here on this afternoon.
Absolutely.
On this Resurrection Sunday. I'm so glad, Brother Claville, that there was over 1,000 years ago, a bridge was built with 2 pieces of wood and 3 nails, and guess what? The toll has been paid for us on that bridge on our way to heaven. So
that's right.
I'm so happy this Resurrection Day.
Absolutely. Speaking of tolls, not to change the subject because we are thankful for that price that's paid. But one of the big issues that I want you to talk about later on the show is how we're going to get these tolls paid going across that bridge that was implemented under several gubernatorial legislation before, under Bob McDonnell. I know a lot of people are still trying to push to get those tolls paid, that contract that was created. But I know we're really anxious to talk about that and also talk about some other things. But, here, like I said, it's election season 2021. And it seems like always in Virginia, there's an important election every year. And for those who are political junkies like myself, I love it. But for the public, sometimes they may get tired of it. How do you combat, the pull for people to say, oh, another election, should we vote again? Why does my vote count?
All votes always count. And as you know, it's often said that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And the truth is, every election is. And so as we're marching forward towards this November, this is the most important election of our lifetimes here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You vote because of change that can come, for change that has come. And so if we look as where we've come from, Lord knows we have come a mighty long way.
Absolutely.
It's come by way of who's, where, when. And the fact that we've been able to take over control of the General Assembly in the top three elected posts in the Commonwealth of Virginia, many things have been done in the way of our wonderful institution at Norfolk State University, as well as another HBCU that's state-funded, Virginia State University. We've now been able to get more funding to Norfolk State and Virginia State than ever.
That's right.
In the history of the funding of these two HBCUs, we've been able to get more funding flowing to Norfolk State and Virginia State more than ever. And it's because of the people listening on this call that decided to go vote. The voting makes a difference. If you look at Georgia, the voting makes a difference. If you look at the election last November, you coming out and voting, putting your shoulder to the wheel, has made a difference. And you are able to see the difference that your voting makes. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, just a few short years ago, we were close, but we just couldn't cross the line when it came to expanding Medicaid.
That's right.
Here in the Commonwealth. I can't think of a more decent thing than to be able to provide health care for the citizens here in one of the most wealthiest countries in the world, and here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so here in the Commonwealth, pre this majority that we have now under the Democratic Party, we were able to expand Medicaid, and that is wonderful here for over 500,000 families here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That this is what the situation was. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, we could not allow for Medicaid if a person made over $7,000 a year. They couldn't get covered for health care. They couldn't get a piece of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act.
No, wait a minute. You said over $7,000 a year?
$7,000 a year.
Who can live off that?
The cap was.
Oh my gosh.
And no one. And here we have people putting it together. They're working 3 part-time jobs to make it all work, and still not having health care, making just a bit over $7,000. So it wouldn't allow for them to get that.
Absolutely.
So what we did was we expanded the coverage of Medicaid, and now persons making affordable incomes here in the Commonwealth of Virginia are able to get health care for their families, for themselves, and for their children, etc. And so it's a better situation now that we've been in control. And we're not finished yet, because we're going to expand coverage for health care even more. And so we're just excited to be able to do that.
That's phenomenal. And who would have thought of that at this time, we're 1 year into this pandemic, that this particular effort by the General Assembly under the Democratic control would have really been the savior for a lot of people here in the Commonwealth because of COVID-19.
Yeah, COVID-19 threw us all a tremendous curveball, if you will. And but just as any curveball that comes, we can still survive. If anybody knows how to survive, it's black people. We know how to survive. We'll find a way.
I know that's right.
It may not be fair. It may not be humane how we're treated sometimes, but we, with a little ingenuity, with a little bit of grit, a little bit of perseverance, we are overcomers.
Absolutely.
So we've been able to do so with COVID, and certainly with the General Assembly, with the Democratic control and a brother like Luke Torian, who chairs
Oh, yeah.
our Appropriations Committee, and I'm blessed to be on that committee as well. Senator Lucas on the Senate side, there on Senate Finance, and Senator Mamie Locke there to head up their caucus. And we're able to do some amazing things for our HBCUs and the entire community. And I'll just simply say, not only COVID, but we'll all remember the dreaded experience in that video that plays in our mind from last summer of Brother George Floyd that ignited yet a reminder to not only the nation but the world that we need to be more humane.
That's right.
In how we treat people. So we went from there to criminal justice reform, to police reform, to just finding ways to treat people more human.
Absolutely.
That's at the crux of the whole matter, that some people would think that they're more human than somebody else, that they're more privileged than somebody else. I think we all would be better to get along if we just treated people more humane, because the truth is we are all the same.
Absolutely.
We're all coming from the same place, and we're all going to die. And that as soon as people recognize that and be willing to see people where they are, to hear people where they are, and to understand people and their plight where they are, the better off that we'll all be.
Look, you're exactly right about that. It's all about humanity and the legacy you leave behind. You're listening to WNSB Blazing Hot 91. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. And for the month of April, we're having a conversation with NSU alums serving in the Virginia General Assembly. Today, we have Delegate Cliff Hayes representing District 77. We're having a conversation with him. And in the second half hour, we're having a conversation with Candi King representing District 2, both NSU alums. Delegate, you talk about, leaving that legacy. You talk about the good that we do for humanity. And we know that some people serve in the legislature and move up because of ambition, but others do it as a service. Can you talk about your experience of serving in the General Assembly and representing the 77?
Thank you so much, Dr. Claville. Well, I'm just so honored and pleased to be able to represent the good people of the 77th House District, in which I have been fighting for this area all of my life. My father grew up in South Norfolk and in this district. My mother has grown up and lived in and around this district. My brother, myself, my wife, my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, all of us are Norfolk State alum. All of us have grown up in the 77. And so we continue that fight because it's a debt that we owe. So many people made it possible for a little nappy-headed kid like me from South Norfolk could run the streets, thrive, and dream and be all that I wanted to be. And it's because of them that I was able to reach the heights that I have. And so I feel that it's a debt that's owed, that I throw the rope back and continue to fight for the 77th House District, and I'm going to do everything I can to do just that.
Absolutely.
So that's why we continue to fight here in the 77. I'm happy to be serving and be blessed on Appropriations Committee in the House of Delegates since I've been there, the chairman of the Communications Technology and Innovation Committee, to be the chairman of the Joint Commission on Science and of Technology, to be able to serve on the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee, and to be the vice chair of policy for the Democratic Caucus in the House of Delegates of the Virginia General Assembly. That is the experience that I've had since I've been there, and I'm just giving God the praise for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And when I talk about service and being a servant, I think about the work that you've done, the friend that you've been to university, and also, just like you said, just to the community. And it's good to have advocates that are in the General Assembly, fighting for what's right as opposed to what's right just for them. And when we talk about fighting for legislation, can you talk about a piece of legislation that you've either sponsored or co-sponsored where you knew it was the right thing to do for your constituents, no matter what the blowback or what anyone else said?
Yeah, this particular session, I was able to sponsor legislation that is certainly a benefit to Virginians all across the Commonwealth, not just in my district, that has to do with data protection and privacy. We all know we're online these days. we're searching, we're tweeting, we're Facebooking, we're doing all kinds of things, going to all kind of websites. But little people know how much data is collected about them. And these companies, many of which sell their data. They are data brokers who literally buy data, package it up, and resell it. That's why when you're searching for something on the internet for a particular item, and then 5 minutes later when you're on another website, you start getting ads about the very thing that you were searching about, it's because that data has been shared and sold. And so my House Bill 2307 that passed this year is going to give you the opportunity as citizens to know what's being collected about you. Once you know what's being collected about you, if anything is wrong or erroneous, you have a right to delete it. You have a right to correct it. And certainly with the egregious behavior of selling your data, you have a right to opt out and say, I don't want my data sold. And the enforcement mechanism that we have built into this legislation is the Attorney General's office. So if Eric Claville wanted to sue because he was tired of IBM or Microsoft sharing his data, and they just keep doing it and won't stop, and they're selling your data. Imagine you alone trying to sue a company like that by yourself.
Oh, it'll be overwhelming.
So what we did was to bake into that bill the authority and the enforcement with the depth and breadth and big hammer of the Attorney General's office. And so the Attorney General will have the ability to contact these companies on your behalf and to stop them from selling your data and to fine them if they do not. And so we certainly believe that that's a mechanism to stop the egregious behavior of sharing your data. And then secondly, I'll just say for the environment, we need clean energy.
That's right.
And so I, along with Senator Louise Lucas, were able to carry a bill to authorize offshore wind as energy here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And right now, it's slated to generate enough energy with wind turbines off the coast of Virginia Beach that will power 1.3 million homes.
Wow!
And it's clean energy. It's the wind that'll be generating that energy, and that energy is already being piped into the grid now, and more turbines are still being built and being put up off the coast of Virginia Beach and North Carolina. So those are just two pieces that I literally carry it myself, and certainly we're always carrying budget amendments for funding from Norfolk State.
Absolutely.
One of which this session is going to help with early childhood education. We all know the wonderful program that we have at Norfolk State in early childhood education, and we all remember Senator Yvonne Miller and her work there in early childhood education. And so we wanted to help that department out and the confines of the facility in which they're in. So I carried an amendment to get a few $1 million for Norfolk State in the early childhood education initiative and program and facility that we have there on the campus. And then, of course, with all of the COVID, as you mentioned, if that wasn't bad enough, students need someone to talk to,
Yeah.
right, for their mental health. And so we have also, I was happy to carry the funding for Norfolk State to have professionals, to have some positions available for mental health professionals
Wow.
and psychiatrists to be there on the campus to give the students someone that they'll be able to go to and share their experience and get professional recommendations on to how they can deal with the situations and the dilemmas in which they're in. And so we were blessed to be able to carry that during this past session.
I asked about the legislation piece because there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that many of us don't know, but we reap the benefits of those actions behind the scene. And look, you and I both know that the legislature is a sausage maker. There's, you throw this in there, you throw that in there, you make allies across this aisle and that aisle, and behind closed doors to get things done. But ultimately, it's about the end product and helping the people and can ensure that, you stay locked into your purpose in serving in legislature. So I'm glad you really talked about the work of the late and the great Yvonne Miller from NSU, who was the first African-American woman to serve in both houses of the General Assembly in the history of this state. So we've got past history makers, but we have current history makers like yourself that are continuing to move that needle forward. Look, in our last few minutes that we have, and it seems like time just flies when we start talking, is that so you've served, since 2016 and you've thrown your hat back in for re-election. Tell us, what are some of first of all, why do you want to go back? And give us an idea of your re-election platform or things that you've learned and that you want to move forward with and perfect, and some new initiatives that you may have.
Yes, Dr. Claville, just simply that the work that we've been able to fight for and get done in the way of education and making sure that education for all, that they will have access to a quality education is very, very important to me. And working alongside my fellow members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and the Democratic Caucus, we'll continue that good work. We've been able to give teachers 5% raises this time, and that's very, very important. Of course, when it comes to education, we want to make sure not only that K through 12 is protected, but that also that we grow our budgets when it comes to our higher education initiatives as well. Obviously, pivoting over to, as I said earlier, living in one of the most wealthy countries of the world, and here in the Commonwealth, it's important for us not to limit ourselves according to what zip code one lives in to determine whether or not they ought to have good, affordable, quality health care. And so we'll continue that fight to make sure that we can expand decent, affordable health care for all Virginians. And then, of course, by vocation and my foundation here at Norfolk State University, where I earned my degree in computer and information systems and have worked for over 25 years in the management of technology. Obviously, I'm concerned about digital equity, digital competence, and to make sure that all of our systems, citizens and communities have the bandwidth to fully participate in the economy and this democracy. It's
Absolutely.
important for us to expand broadband access everywhere we go. We know no matter what area of your concern, broadband is extremely important. If nothing else, COVID has taught us that telemedicine is important. Well, you can't have telemedicine if you don't have a way to connect.
That's right.
To your doctor. If COVID has taught us nothing else, surviving in the classroom when we couldn't be in person, it's important that there's an infrastructure and network access in this area, in this time of the Internet of Things, that we make sure that everyone can connect to the Internet. And so those are key areas for me when it comes to our citizens, healthcare, education, technology, and certainly the infrastructure of transportation and clean energy are other areas of concern as well. Criminal justice reform is always important. Police reform is always important. And, of course, expanding access to the voting booth is a top priority. We've made it easier now to vote here in the Commonwealth than ever. We've been able to have early voting now up to 45 days prior to the election. Mm-hmm. We've been able to make Election Day a holiday here in the Commonwealth.
All right.
And then to top that off, we're looking to have voting on Sunday here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So when folks come out of church, if your church is a precinct, guess what? We're going to have it ready for you to vote on Sunday.
Come on.
So we want access to the ballot box to be without any obstruction. And so we're going to definitely be there to do all we can to make that be the case.
You know, and talk about a tale of two southern states. And you talk about voting, look at what Georgia did, you know, in their legislature. Made it illegal, very petty, to give out water and food, and compare that to Virginia, the former capital of the Confederacy, giving access to the ballot. So like you said, every vote counts because it matters who you put in office representing you.
Let me say that this voter suppression stuff that's going on in places like Georgia and other places, that is out of style. And these jokers who continue to wreak havoc on human beings and try to suppress their votes in this democracy, they're going to find a nice seat that we're going to have for them in the stands.
Come on.
They'll be able to sit up and watch this legislation is being made as opposed to being a part of that process. We're going to replace those seats with some people who understand the importance of where we are in this democracy.
Absolutely. That is Delegate Cliff Hayes representing District 77 here in Hampton Roads, a NSU alum doing great work in the legislature. In our last few seconds, he's running for re-election. Tell us where our listeners can find more information about you.
Well, certainly you can find information by going to www.cliffhayes.com. You can send us an email at vote@cliffhayes.com, or you can call our office at 757-364-0272. And certainly we've been blessed to represent the 77th House District, and we look forward to continuing that fight for the citizens of the 77th. And certainly, as you talked about me grabbing a torch, if you will, from folks who came before us, like Senator Miller, I've been blessed to be able to come there in the General Assembly, and just as you have coming on in just a few minutes, I look forward. I stand on the tiptoes of anticipation with some of this dynamic leadership of these young people like Sister Candi King, the delegate from the 2nd District, and excited about another Spartan leading and carrying the torch.
Absolutely. Everyone, that's Delegate Cliff Hayes, NSU alum representing District 77, joining us for a conversation with NSU alum serving in the Virginia General Assembly. We'll have Candi King representing District 2 when we come right back from this commercial break.
Make sure you wake up early Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. with the Blazing Hot Morning Show.
I'm Cheryl Wilkerson. I'll have your Behold moment, your good news, your headline news, and don't forget, entertainment news.
I'm DJ INC from the Top Ropes. I'll tell you why every day's a holiday. I'll give you the update on those sports and on-the-spot traffic and weather updates.
And check out the Blazing Hot Tea Report with your girl K Noteworthy, where I'll be serving all the scoop about your favorite celebrity.
And can't forget about the Blazing Hot Morning Shower mix with the legendary DJ Heart Attack. So start your day with us Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on Blazing Hot 91. We'll get through this together.
Blazing Hot 91 is looking for your support. Financial support, that is. Get ready. Coming this May, we're going to see how much you love us.
Quiet, he's going to say something.
We'll be asking for your tax-deductible contribution. We're a public radio station. That means we're supported by you, the listener. You guys tell us you love us all the time.
The hottest radio station.
Now, you can show us how much. And that keeps us blazing the airways with your urban alternative mix of music.
Yo, you know the deal.
So start planning your contribution to Blazing Hot 91 now. Be ready to drop that cash. Save the date, May 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's all love, and it's all for you on Blazing Hot 91.
It's election year 2021, and many candidates are on the election trail already. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, it seems like every year there's a very important election. Well, this year in 2021, we're re-electing our new governor, our new attorney general, new lieutenant governor, and every member of the General Assembly. So for the month of April, what we've decided to do here on Stay the Water is to have a conversation with every NSU alum who's currently serving in the Virginia General Assembly. Now, of course, we know that politics dominates seems like every aspect and moment of our lives. But here at Norfolk State University, we're fortunate to have many servants who are working on our behalf in order to ensure that there's legislation passed that benefits the good of our community. So here in our second half hour, we have NSU alum and delegate of District 2, Candi King. Delegate King, welcome to Stay the Water.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back on the show. And thank you for highlighting, everything that's going on in Virginia politics right now. The world is watching us, and we're doing some amazing things. So I'm happy to be here with you today to talk a little about that.
Delegate King, you couldn't have put it any better. The world is watching us, right? Because this is 4 years after, let's just say, former President Donald Trump pretty much turned everything on top of his head. And we're almost we're a year into a global pandemic, once in 100 years. So now the question is, on a national level, we tend to have conversations about hard issues, but now can we do it on the state level? So we're here to talk about what Virginia has been doing, especially since you've been in the legislature.
Absolutely. Virginia has been doing some amazing work. And we're actually, with our Democratic majority in Virginia, we're making progress on really big things like abolishing the death penalty, which we know has been, used as a tool against people of color for many years. And it's just been so inequitably applied, with like 78% of those sentenced to death were Black people. So, that was a major win, a path towards the legalization of marijuana, another major win. But our Virginia Voting Rights Act, which is for the first time at the state level, the first state in the South to do it, we are protecting the right to vote. So, with many of the changes at the federal level over the past couple of years to try to dilute and create barriers to voting access, we've created a groundbreaking policy that will protect people's right to vote. So those are all big things, but we also did great things this session for people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. We have the Virginia Missing Adult Autism Alert Program. So that's another huge one, which was actually, I co-patroned that along with Delegate Hayes, who you previously had on the show. But we've done great things to protect people with disabilities. We've done great things in human trafficking. But one of the biggest things that we're not hearing enough about is the budget. Pay raises for teachers.
Yes.
Pay raises for state and local employees. Funding for our historically Black colleges and universities in Virginia. So just a tremendous amount of work that has gone on this session, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Now, look, you've mentioned some really generational changing legislation that was passed with, of course, the abolishing of the death penalty and the Virginia's Voting Rights Act. The only state in the United States that's passed a recent Voting Rights Act here in 2021. And, Norfolk State University this week is co-partnering. Well, they're partnering with James Madison University. And our president is one of the two university presidents, along with James Madison president, who serves as the university president for the 50th anniversary of the rewriting of the 1971 Constitution. And there's a program that's going to be virtual here on April 8th. I'll talk about it at the very end of the show for all our listeners to tune in and stream online. But if you think about it, 1971, when we had to rewrite our Constitution, it was because of the restrictions on voting and disenfranchisement of black citizens because of because of the civil rights movement. And now, right at about 50 plus years later, the General Assembly is coming in and writing the Voting Rights Act to protect voting even more so. How phenomenal is that?
Absolutely phenomenal. And I have to shout out the 757's very own Delegate Price out of Newport News, who was the champion and the chief fighter for this legislation. Because what we know for sure is that if people want to block progress, if they want to take the country backwards in terms of access and prosperity for all, the first place they will try to do it is in the voting booth.
Absolutely.
So it was critical that we protect that. And I'm a member of the Privileges and Elections Committee. And as we look at what's happening in Georgia, I want people to know that people have tried the same things in Virginia. And we blocked every single effort as members of the Privileges and Elections Committee, every single effort to create barriers to voting. We blocked those this session.
Absolutely.
So we have to protect the progress that we've made by coming out to vote in every single election.
That's right. And, you talk about, of course, Delegate Cliff Hayes, your partner in the General Assembly, and also your fellow alum here at Norfolk State. He mentioned the work that you're doing, and he was excited to have you here in our second part of the show. But like you said, that's a collective effort that takes place. It just doesn't happen. One person does this or does that, but it's a collective effort where you got to go behind the scenes and get it done. And I want you to talk about you seem like you're running an re-election every year because this is really
Virginia for you. And for me, so I am actually running for re-election. The primary date is June 8th, but early voting will begin in April. It will begin this month on the 24th. And folks in Northern Virginia and Stafford, Prince William County can go to candyking4va.com to learn more information. But I'm in a position where I will actually run in 3 elections in 365 days. And it's okay because one thing my education at Norfolk State has taught me is that if you believe in something, you fight for it. And I believe in a Virginia that is inclusive. I believe in a Virginia that protects people's right to vote, that will reform its criminal justice system. And that's why I don't have a problem if I have to run in 10 elections in a year. Too much work has been done by Senators Yvonne Miller, Senator Louise Lucas, Senator Spruill out of Chesapeake, and all of those people who came before me. They've done too much work for me to, give up because I might have to run 20 times in a year's time. So I am running for re-election. And here's the thing. I made a promise to the people in the 2nd District when I ran. I promised that I would be a voice for working families. And that's exactly what I did. We passed the G3 program, which will create tuition-free community college. I'm proud to be a sponsor of that.
That's right. That is right.
We also expanded our child care credit voucher program because women are being forced to leave their jobs because they don't have access to child care. And then child care, the cost has become almost a second mortgage or another car. So we're doing work to address that, to safely get our students and teachers back into school. And top of the list, I worked very hard for the fair and equitable distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Absolutely.
So I made promises to the people. I kept those promises. We've done tremendous work, but I have more work to do. And I don't think that there's anyone more passionate about working class families than I am, because that's my existence. First generation college student.
Absolutely.
I know what it's like to feel hunger. I know what it's like to, be in a school system that is not working for you. So I take that passion to the State House virtually now, but I take that passion to the State House and fight for our community. So I'm ready to go June 8th. Tell a friend, vote Candi King.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned running for 3 elections in 365 days, but I want to explain how that took place to our audience. I mean, I know how it took place, but the district that you were in, how did you fill that seat and why was it open? And then why is it 3 elections in 365?
Sure. So I'm actually filling the term of my delegate who resigned to run for governor. So I ran in a 5-day election because the code has very strict requirements. The election has to take place within 30 days in order to fill the seat. So in 5 days, I won with 45% of the vote in a Democratic primary, which was a 5-way primary. I then ran in the general election 3 weeks later, which was against a Republican candidate who previously won that election. Now we're in the Democratic primary where, I have to run again to be the Democratic nominee, which will then take us to the general election in November to run against the Republican candidate. So in true Virginia fashion, we like to have an election every year and multiple ones for me, but I think part of the reason I ran when my delegate resigned is that I had the experience, thanks to Norfolk State and thanks to my time in the General Assembly. I had the experience, and I knew my community needed someone who could hit the ground running, right? Who didn't have to learn the process. So, I've been prepared for that, so to speak. And I think that resonated with folks in my community as well.
Absolutely. So there you have it. 3 elections in 365 days for a part-time position, by the way. But really,
yes. I like to tell people, I am a working mother, working a 9 to 5. And so, I tell people like my paying job, because this is part-time and, it feels like I'm paying it sometimes, but I know that I'm paying it forward. Absolutely. For those who are coming behind me. So I think it's worth every sacrifice.
Absolutely. And you're definitely one that hit the ground running. You listen to Blazing Hot 91 WNSB here at Norfolk State University. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and you've joined us here in the month of April, where we're having a conversation with Norfolk State University alums that are currently serving in the General Assembly. Here in the second half hour, we're talking with Delegate Candi King, representing District 2 and a Norfolk State University alum. When I mentioned, Delegate King, that you hit the ground running, I mean, like you said, it was a 5-day primary and you got in and you were the new delegate. And pretty much you came in during a time that was unprecedented. So, you came during a pandemic. And usually on the Hill, there's a lot of hustle and bustle, and you're meeting with this government relations professional, with this interest group. You're taking pictures with, your university and the students that come up. You have interns and so forth. How was it different from the usual hustle and bustle for you coming in?
Sure. So it was very different, being in a virtual space. So in the House, we decided, for the safety of everyone involved, we decided to have our session virtually. And we have really great staff that made that possible. But for me, it was really important to make myself available to the people who actually elected me. So each day, between 8 and 10 a.m., I'm having office hours for my constituents to speak directly with me, and doing that virtually. And then hearing from groups from government relations professionals and representatives and people who are subject matter experts, which I think is so critical as a legislator, to talk to people who are actually in these industries for things that we're voting on. So spent a lot of time in the evening doing that, in addition to being in the session sometimes I think the last day of session we were in for maybe 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
Because, the people's work just takes time. And we spent a lot of time in virtual sessions voting and debating and discussing things, but also connecting with the communities and those who have interest in the work we're doing.
Absolutely.
And so also for me, I spent a lot of time mentoring. I had students from my community virtually shadow me, like almost one day of each week that I was in session, I would invite a student to shadow me because I just feel it's so important to, people can't be what they can't see.
Absolutely.
And I think it's one thing to see, oh, this is my delegate, but to come in and learn the process and create pathways for diverse groups of students was something that was important to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that innovation that you mentioned that I like where, of course, Delegate Hayes talked about if any people can make it, it's African Americans, but that innovation where you just didn't say, oh, well, you can't come visit me, it's the pandemic, but you made a way. And even in the midst of, like you said, your other 3 titles that you wear, you made a way for people to interact with you. How valuable do you think that was to not just the interns, but also your constituents?
I think it was extremely valuable because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. People are still struggling and people are still having challenges that if we don't create opportunities for them to share what's impacting their everyday life, then we are putting ourselves as elected officials, we're doing a disservice to ourselves because I tell people, my first vote is my conscience and my community. So I am constantly reaching out to people in the community. Hey, this is being proposed. What do you think about it? Getting that input because it is not about me. It is not about what, I believe. It's about how I can best represent our community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you say you're running for re-election, and, there are some, you hit the ground running the first year of filling the last portion of your former delegate who's running for governor position. What are some of your initiatives in your re-election platform that you're going to take with you in these next 4 years to represent your district?
Sure. So equal pay for equal work is really top of mind for me. Women, Black women especially, are lagging behind in pay. We're not lacking in education. We're one of the most educated groups in America, and still we face lower pay.
Delegate Candi,
I think that
real quick. I mean, as an educated Black female, college educated, with experience and really doing the heavy lifting, we hear from quote unquote experts, we listen to studies, but just from a layman's person's viewpoint, why do you think that is? Why is it that Black women are not valued, their work is not valued as much as, say, their white counterparts or even men?
I think because our government has not required people to be fair. I think that businesses see it as, it's an opportunity to get the same or even better quality work.
That's right.
For a lower price. And as long as that is allowed to continue on without our government, it's the same thing as it's a human rights issue to me as far as I'm concerned. Because if I'm paid less, these Black children that I'm raising are given less opportunity.
That's right.
So it trickles down. And because that has been allowed to fester without any oversight, without any requirement, it continues to go on. People see the value in a woman's work, and they see the value in Black women's work. They love it, right? But they are not required to equally pay us. And until that changes, it will continue on as, business as usual. And that is something that is top of mind for me, as well as paid sick leave. In a commonwealth like Virginia, we have hardworking people who feel that they have to go to work sick because they don't have access to paid sick leave.
That's right.
And I'm very proud that we were able to provide paid leave for home health care workers who have been holding us up in this pandemic. I think that is a major step in the right direction, and I was proud to support that in the budget. But overall, I believe the pandemic has really grown in Black and brown communities because people don't have access to paid sick leave, and they feel that they have to choose between their feeding their family and their life with the COVID-19 disease. So it puts people in a very difficult situation, and that's something that I plan to address. Another thing that is a passion of mine is special education. I passed a bill this session that requires the State Board of Education to create standards for eligibility determination for special needs students. This is important because what students are getting in one county and what they're getting in another could be totally different. And we have 164,000 students receiving special education services in Virginia, and a lot of the Black and brown students are not receiving the support and things that they need to flourish, right? And so I'm proud of that bill, but we need to go even further and eliminate some of these unfunded backlogs. I have a 17-year-old daughter who is on a waiver list for services. She's been on that list for 10 years.
Oh, my gosh.
My case is not unique. She is very fortunate to have parents who can, provide her with supplemental things that she needs. But every child who has special needs is not as fortunate. And we have to fund our waiver list, those housing lists. We have young people with special needs who can contribute greatly to our Commonwealth, but we have to provide them with the support to do that. And I think, we have a lot of issues, but we can't forget our vulnerable special needs community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are very important issues that really affect our everyday life. And if not you, the individual, it affects someone in your family. So a lot of times, Delegate King, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes by servants in our legislative bodies like yourself that people really don't understand the work that goes in behind it and the work in that, what we call that sausage maker, the legislative body where, you have to talk to some people on the other side of the aisle or even your same side or your sweet mate that you really don't want to sometimes rub shoulders with, but you do it in order to ensure that the services get to the people that need it the most. So those are phenomenal issues, and I know that you're, like you said, you're a huge advocate, for education that's, you call it special, I call it enriched education, because because these are rich. These children are rich. They're rich in talent. They're rich in life, and we need to support them. And by doing that, we also support our families.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a piece of legislation that you actually worked on, and you felt that it was the right thing to do, no matter what the blowback may have been or whatever stand you had to take? You were going to sponsor or co-sponsor or stand for this bill and ensure that it was passed?
So it's quite a few of those, and one that stands out is moving forward with the restoration of rights for those who have served their time, right? So for I hate the term ex-felons, but for people who previously had felony charges, I feel, and this is something that Senator Yvonne Miller was extremely passionate about and a visionary in this way. This is something she was talking about 25 years ago before it was popular. I feel that it is a disservice to withhold someone's right to vote after they paid their debt to society. And, that is something that, I was willing to go to bat for because, again, it's a human rights issue.
That's right.
It's an equality issue. It's the cornerstone of our democracy being able to go into that voting booth. So if we want to talk about rehabilitation, we want to talk about re-entry into society, we want to talk about all of those things. Being an active civic participant is an important part of empowering people to know that they matter.
Absolutely.
And, growing up in Portsmouth and seeing people, struggle and have very difficult upbringing and circumstances that lead to sometimes to crime, and having a person do the work to change their life, turn their life around, and then they look at the world around them and they don't have a voice in their government, was just something that was too unfair to go on any further for me.
Absolutely. That's Delegate Candi King, representing District 2 here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and also NSU alum who's running for re-election here in 2021. Delegate King, very quickly, where can our listeners find more about you and your campaign? Which website?
Sure, you can go to Candi, that's Candi with an I, CANDIKING, for VA.com. You can learn more about my campaign. You can volunteer virtually to help us get the word out about this campaign.
Thank you so much. And look, thanks for being a friend to university, and we'll definitely bring you back in the near future.
Thank you so much for having me and all the work that you're doing. Behold the green and gold forever. I love my NSU.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We'll talk next time.
Okay, bye.
Well, you have it. Thank you so much for joining us in this month of April as we have a conversation with NSU alums serving in the General Assembly. Don't forget that every year is an important election, and yes, your vote does count. So make sure you listen out for the primaries that are coming up here in June and the early voting, which starts in April. And here on State of the Water, we'll ensure to give you that information and bring you up to speed. Lastly, before we go on this Resurrection Sunday, I want you to save the date for Looking Back, Looking Forward, the 50th anniversary of the rewriting of the Virginia Constitution, presented in partnership with James Madison University and Norfolk State University this April 8th at 7 p.m. Join this important program and conversation with President Javon Adams Gaston and JMU President Jonathan Alger, as well as law and legal experts, retired Virginia Supreme Court Justice Elizabeth McClanahan, who's currently the Dean of Appalachian Law School, and the Warner Booker Distinguished Professor of International Law at UVA, Professor Dick Howard. You could stream this online at YouTube on the Norfolk State University's social media, and go to nsu.edu for more information. We want to thank all of you again for joining us here on this Resurrection Sunday. I know that we're anxious to get back into our areas of worship and ready to get back in this summertime with our loved ones, but we want to make sure that you stay safe. Continue to adhere to social distancing requirements and guidelines. Make sure that you make the best medical decision for you and your family as it relates to vaccinations and exercise. Make sure you're keeping yourself healthy, and vitamins in conjunction with your physician. Again, here on Save the Water, we bring policymakers, movers, and shakers to you, the community, to discuss issues that are important to you. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll see you next Sunday again with another conversation with NSU alums serving in the Virginia General Assembly. And keep in mind, on Blazing Hot 91, we will get through this together.